Today I am here with just me. This is episode 500. Ooh, wow, 500. Yeah, I'm not sure I would have thought we got to 500 until we were at 450. So it has been a pretty cool ride, and it's not over. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I am here with just me. This is episode 500. So, wow, 500. I honestly would not have thought we would have gotten to 500. Yeah, I'm not sure I would have thought we got to 500 until we were at 450. So it has been a pretty cool ride, and it's not over. We're gonna have some changes that I'm going to talk about, but I'm pretty excited. We've made it to 500. I really was very reluctant to start a podcast in the first place, so getting to this point is pretty cool. Thank you to especially Mark and Austin for pushing me there in the beginning. And thank you to all the guests. We haven't had 500 guests, but we've had close to that because although a few have come on more than once, it's been our goal to kind of always have new people. So pretty cool. And I am very, very grateful for that, for the people that gave me their time and their wisdom and their experience and shared all of that with me and the listeners. As I'm sure is obvious, I've never really tried to monetize this thing. So I know that people who listen and, leave reviews and come on the podcast are doing it for genuine reasons. So thank you again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those of you who have been on the show. And I look forward to many, many more valuable conversations. I mentioned changes. One main change, what we're going to do, we've been releasing 2 episodes per week. We are going to drop that down to 1 episode per week. And mainly that just has to do with my schedule. It's been hard to make sure I'm recording enough to keep up with 2. And I want, to make sure that they're always quality episodes, but we may release, we'll release 1 less a week, which means we won't get to 1,000 as fast as we got to 500, but that's okay. It'll be an interesting evolution, and with that word evolution, I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I've toyed with the idea of changing the name of the podcast to the evolution of why. I'm not going to do that. I've thought a lot about it, actually, and I think it's a cool name, but the first step really is to know your why, to identify it, and sure, it can change over time, and mine has to an extent, but you need to know what it is in order to kind of use it to its fullest extent. And so I think that I like the name Know Your Why. I recognize that people's whys evolve over their lives. My own has a lot. I didn't even know it was called that for a long time. So we'll keep it the same. It will stay the Know Your Why podcast. We will reduce the number of episodes to 1 a week. So we get the 52 a year instead of 104. But again, always trying to just make sure that we have quality. I figured a couple things to talk about here for this solo episode. One, I think, would be, what have I learned over these last, I guess we're about 4 years into the podcast, a touch over. What have I learned through podcasting? What have I learned about podcasting? What have I learned, in business and real estate and all of that? First, about the podcast. I mentioned I didn't want to do it to begin with. I still don't Still don't love the sound of my voice on here. I still don't want to be looking at my own face in a camera. But at the end of the day, what I realized is the the ability to create relationships and meet people that are doing really cool, um, exceptional, inspirational things, and get to have like a firsthand conversation with them has been really valuable to me. I've learned a lot. It would be impossible to name for you, every single tidbit that I've taken out of these, but um, you know, so many things. And again, thank you to the guests. So many things that when I have these conversations, I am listening and taking away everything I can. So to me, that's been the single best thing about the podcast is just that the people I've met and the take home messages I've been able to glean from those conversations have been really great. Um, Having a podcast, producing a podcast, keeping it going for now 500 and beyond episodes, that's really about the team. And this theme will show up a lot here as I'm talking today, but that's about the team. The team I have, I wouldn't have had a podcast without the team. So thank you to those people, to Mark who really helped kick this thing off and produce the podcast for so long. Thank you to Mark. Thank you to Song, who uh, is the reason Lark Capital can continue to be effective. She really is. You know, she likes to stay behind the scenes, but it is really the reason why we can get so much done. Edwin and Cindy, um, my other parts of the team, they do such a good job, and are so just willing to try things and give me ideas and this. So I definitely would not be able to do the podcast without them. And so thank you to you guys. I truly appreciate having you a part of this. Um, so what have I learned with regards to, we'll say business and real estate and investing? It kind of all lumps together. A lot of people, you get the questions about how do you do all these things? How are these related? Those don't seem related, that kind of thing. I'm a surgeon and I invest in real estate, and we have construction businesses now and things like that. It doesn't seem like it all relates, but honestly, business is business. It's kind of all the same idea. You have um, an idea, right? You have an idea and an execution of that idea, or a vision and an execution of that vision. There's a whole lot of pieces that go to that, but ultimately, each time you do it, it gets actually a little bit easier to figure out what works, at least what works for me, and how I like to run businesses. I think I've learned a lot of lessons over time, and what matters. And I think, again, back to the team theme, team partnerships, um, the people that you work with, whether that's employees, vendors, investors, the people that you work with matter. Maybe above all else, it is certainly the team that helps you execute vision and get that you know get your ideas, bring your ideas to life. Certainly, that team is just so critical to the success of anything. Um, but then also you bring in other people, right? You start to work with attorneys, accountants, you work with business partners, you work with investors, and what I realized really excites me is just working with people that I want to work with. And so that'll probably be a bit of a shift in the future. I think you know I um, I've never really enjoyed capital raising, and I think that it was something that I did because, it was kind of what you were supposed to do. I've never really enjoyed it. I don't have an intention to sort of continue that at any sort of scale. Certainly, working with people as part of our businesses, and if people want to invest, um, we can have conversations about it. But it's not something that I'm necessarily actively pursuing. We continue to take care of the investors that we have, but it's just something that I'd rather have be relationship based rather than, oh, let's kind of mass market, who wants to be a part of X deal. I think that's something that some people are excellent at, and I will leave them to it. um so yeah, the team is so key. I learned, with regards to real estate, I think that maybe, outside of the team, the 1A and 1B in terms of importance are the debt, whatever sort of debt you have. And when I say that, I'm sort of speaking pretty broadly. The news has gotten a lot of, we've heard a lot about interest rates. The interest rate is just one single line item on your underwriting, and is not an issue. It is an issue, but it isn't an issue. It's not the only issue. And if you can manage those interest rates the correct way, i.e., either getting fixed debt and knowing that your deal works at whatever that fixed debt is, and if you get to refinance at a lower rate someday, great, but it needs to work without that being a requirement. Because as we've seen over these last couple of years, I nobody this I will say this: nobody has any idea what's going to happen with rates. I don't think I've listened to way too many people speculate, and the market bets on, are we going to get a interest rate cut or stay the same, or it's going to go up. No one knows. I don't, and anyone who says they know, I don't believe you. uh, there's indications, but I just don't believe it's a predictable thing. And if you're trying to predict it, you're going to get yourself burned. So that's my take on interest rates: is that they ultimately, they matter, but they don't matter. You just have to work within the confines of the interest rate that you are presented with at the time of taking on that debt. So when it comes to debt overall, interest rate is one thing. Whether or not that's adjustable, and it can be adjustable. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't use it, but if you're using adjustable, you should build in a pretty safe margin in terms of if that goes up. So um, ultimately, you want to have that deal work from a numbers perspective, even if you have an adjustable rate. If that rate goes up by 2 or 3%, because we've seen that can happen. Um, so rate, adjustable or not adjustable, terms, and largely, what is the length of the debt. So really, it all comes down to, I never want to be forced into a sale or a refinance. I never want there to be a clock that tells me this is when my capital event has to occur, because things happen. Markets change, black swan events. We've seen all of that in the last 5 years. And so if you're told that you're going to have to sell or refinance when it's the worst possible time to sell or refinance, that's a problem. And so this is across real estate, or any asset class, really. And that's my take on it. I think that people, sure, some people will disagree with some of this, and that's totally fine. I'm more speaking to.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
How I will approach things going forward, and frankly, with the, with those criteria that I've developed around debt, it actually makes it pretty hard to invest in real estate at the moment because the market hasn't adjusted to that sort of thinking. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. I think that the other piece of the debt is the lender that you're working with, the bank, the institution, whoever it is. The lender really matters. We were just talking about this recently with someone else about um, I'm an investor in a deal, a passive investment. I'm an investor in the deal. The GPs, the operators of this deal, I trust 100%. I don't think there's really anybody better. I know that they did everything they possibly could do working on a deal, and it hasn't gone well. And it is now in receivership, which basically means that the bank has taken back control of the asset. Um, Leading up to that, the operators tried everything they possibly could. They put in a lot of their money. They tried working with the bank to come up with a solution, how to kind of stretch this out, make this work over the long term. The bank was completely uncooperative. The lender was completely uncooperative and would not work with them or do anything that actually would help the situation. So then they brought it into receivership, and now the asset is much worse than it was before. So, um, from my view, that lender has ruined the deal and likely cost all of us investors the our capital. So it all matters, and since the lender tends to be by far the biggest investor in the deal, they have a lot of control, obviously. So it's very very important that you know that lender, trust that lender in whatever capacity you're trying to make a deal. And so again, doing things like this, having these criteria in place, is probably going to limit the number of deals that you can do, but it also means you're very likely to be in safe ones when you do them. Um, so with that, what that has meant, and it wasn't in this wasn't made, decision made in a vacuum. I have owned businesses. I currently have my surgery business, and really started to think about how I could diversify the portfolio besides real estate. I'm still invested in real estate. I still intend to invest in real estate, but how can I diversify my portfolio even further? And that's when I started to look into business acquisition. Um, like real estate, there's a lot of noise about what you should and shouldn't do. Uh, I would tell you, if you're looking to get into this, into investing or operating in any capacity, my opinion is don't listen to the noise. Learn from people. I've had fantastic mentors. Learn from people, but don't listen to the noise about you should always do it this. If someone says you should always do it a specific way, I would run away from that. There's not only one way to do things, and certainly there are reasons why doing something one way works for one person and not the other. And so um, I'll get more specific with an example here and why I say this. So in the, we're buying businesses. I that was in an attempt to diversify the portfolio. In the beginning, as I started to look for businesses, I listened to the noise, and it was some of the rules out there, if you will, the rules that people say, buy don't buy project based businesses, only buy as big as you possibly can buy. I'm sure I'll think of some others, but there are kind of described ways you should do these things, but not necessarily that doesn't work for everybody. So um, I looked for businesses with those parameters in mind for a long time. Never really came across anything that was that made sense for me. Always kept circling around back to the construction world because I have a background in that since I was a teenager, and frankly, that's what compelled me to get into large scale commercial real estate was that sort of value add and construction side of things. That's what I really enjoy and what I understand. Um, I started looking at construction businesses, even though they say don't look at construction businesses. Come to find out, there's some pretty profitable construction businesses, and also, guess what? Because people say don't buy those businesses, you can get them for a bit of a lower multiple than the businesses that people really market are the ones you should buy. So I started to realize that, like, oh wait, construction is something I know, understand, and can function in that world. And oh, well, also, by the way, this is pretty cool. These things are on a multiple basis less expensive than the car washes, the laundromats, the I don't know, whatever things people tell you to buy. Um, and so I started looking in the construction world. I got my general contractor's license. Probably should have got it 20, 30 years ago, but never really had the reason to. I live in California. In California, you need the appropriate licensing to buy construction businesses. So there are ways around it, but it's actually not very easy to get around it, and it's you put yourself at a larger risk by not having the licensing. So also harder to get an SBA loan, just for the record. And so I started looking at construction businesses. Went through a couple that I got under contract that didn't work out for one reason or another. But through all the process, I learned a lot of things. One here's another one that I'll tell you. If you see one of a social media post or whatever, and this applies to real estate or buying a business, and it's like, oh, buy your next insert asset here in the next 90 days. Do not sign up for that. Right? It doesn't need to be something that you rush. Um, Come to find out, though I thought you could buy a business in such short order, the actual average timeline to acquiring a business, is over 2 years. And so when you sign up for a 6 month or even a 1 year mentorship program, thinking, well, I'll buy a business, maybe a couple of businesses in that time, and then it doesn't happen, you might be disappointed, but come to find out that that's actually the norm. So it's fine, do the mentorship. I don't have a problem with that. I've done a number of them and have enjoyed many of them, but understand what the reality is of what you're trying to do. So don't fall for the hype. I think is maybe that the simple way to state that. But anyway, so you have these rules about how to buy a business, how you're supposed to buy a business, and I hear it in the mentorship programs. I hear it on podcasts and things like that, and it's like, oh, that doesn't sound like a business that is effective. Again, I use the construction as an example because that's the world I know. But don't buy project based businesses. Don't buy construction businesses because of X, Y, and Z. They're working capital intense. Like, all of those things are true about them, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy them because of that. It just means you have to know that that's how a construction business works. And there are plenty of construction businesses that are valued in the tens or hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. So you certainly can do well in construction. You just have to know how to do it. So my focus started to shift more into construction. So that was the first kind of realization that I had, that it was like, hey, maybe if, I love the Warren Buffett quote, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. Like the contrary approach to doing things often, I think often is the right way to do it. If everybody's doing it, probably not going to work well in your favor in the long run anyway. So I started to look at construction businesses, and really came across a few that I liked, and again, didn't necessarily work out for a number of reasons. I then came across one that turned out to be the first one that we've acquired, which is 154 Electric. And the reason or that one was a little different because it was listed on BizBuySell, which is actually a great website to find businesses for. I, I I think it gets maybe a bad rap, but it's an easy way. It's an easy way to get started in that space and see what's out there. Um, but I found it on BizBuySell was listed by the owner, not by a broker. Um, this is nothing about disparaging against brokers. I've met a number that are great, but I like this better. I like the direct contact with the seller, because what I will say, and I've said this before on the podcast and talked to other people who've acquired businesses, when you are buying someone's business, now usually in real estate, it's very transactional, especially in the syndication world. You're buying something that someone else just bought 5 years ago, and they bought it really with investors. They bought it to make money in 5 years. That was the idea. Totally fine, great business model. Um, However, very very transactional. You don't have to really care too much. Should treat people well and practice good business etiquette, but you don't really have to care too much about who that seller was, because likely they held this for a short term. That may be different if you find someone, you're buying a real estate asset that someone's lived in that home for their whole life. But typically in the investment world for real estate, I think a lot of times it's very very transactional. Even if I think back to buying my own single family homes, I don't I almost never I'm not sure I ever met the sellers ever. Just wasn't It's just not a thing. You deal with the brokers, for better or worse. That's kind of how that functions in the business acquisition world. There are a lot of brokers involved, but the difference to me is that a lot of this is, I always use the analogy that it is like that seller is selling their child, or maybe selling is a bad way to refer to a child, but maybe when a father gives his daughter up for marriage or something like that. Just essentially, it's an end of a very very meaningful extended portion of someone's life. Usually, say for example, this electrical business. The seller's name is Alfredo. He's fantastic, fantastic guy. He started the business 40 years ago. So for 40 years, he's built this business, worked in this business, managed the employees, created relationships. You can look at it as he's an electrician, and he's a fantastic electrician, but he made a business out of nothing and had it successful for 40 years. So the worst possible thing I think you could do as a business buyer, as someone trying to practice acquisition, is you're going to is to ignore that fact, to pretend like it doesn't matter. And I think sometimes some of that nuance gets lost in brokered deals. I don't know if it's intentional or not intentional, but it's like, if you don't get to have a really direct, meaningful conversation and relationship with that seller, um, I think it sets you up for some troubles. One, you're not going to, if they're for some reason not being forthcoming, or they're uh, you know trying to unload some bad situation on you. You won't be able to pick that up if you don't have the direct context of talking to them. But even more importantly, most of the time you buy a business, you're going to need that seller to help you afterwards, whether they stay on in an official capacity, or they stay on for however long they stay on. You're going to need their help, for so many more things than you actually think. You're going to need their help to teach you how that business was running. You're going to need that help to sort of have them put their blessing on you with the employees, if you want to keep the employees. Same thing with all their pre-existing contacts and customers. You need to have that person in your corner, and without building that relationship ahead of time, I think it's pretty hard to know. It might still work out, but it's pretty hard to know that it's going to work out. um, Alfredo and I talked off and on for about 9 months, after I found that first, he had listed it, and we talked about it, and I, I got to go to the office, and I got to see, kind of how he ran the business, and he showed me financials and things like that. But most of all, we just talked, and we talked about, what does he want? Like, what does he tells me he wants to work for 2 or 3 more years. He's getting close to retirement. And like, well, that sounds amazing to me, to have a master electrician that still wants to stay in the business for that, a number of years. Um, while I come in and learn, what he's been doing, and add what I can to it. So, we talked for 9 months, and then eventually he said, yeah, I think I'm ready. And we came to agreement on terms. We basically wrote up the contract, had an attorney check it all over, make sure it made sense, and we went ahead and I bought the business. And I look at it more like I partnered with him, because he's still in the business. We work well together. Um, there are strengths that he has that I don't have at all. There are strengths that I have that he doesn't have. The excitement about the future with this is, even though, I know he's not going to work in the business for another 40 years. I know he's excited about, what he sees for the future. And so am I. And we didn't have to we didn't have to have an outside person tell us how to feel about each other. We didn't even have to get a bank involved. I've bought the business through seller financing. Like, I'm not suggesting that this is an easy way to do it, because I don't think these things are available like every day. But if you're willing to put in the work and be patient on developing relationships with the sellers, um, kind of going direct to seller can be very, very effective. And so, the other piece is, everybody says buy as big as you possibly can, because that's the safer business. But I think most of the people that are in the ETA space, the entrepreneur through acquisition, the sweet spot that you're told to buy in is somewhere between 750,000 and 1.5 million in profit. They say anything less than that is a small, fragile business, blah, 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 all this stuff. But anything more than that, you're probably competing with private equity. And so then it's hard to be competitive. And so there's all these reasons why you're supposed to buy in that particular window. But that's where everybody's looking. That's what everybody's telling you. That's what everybody's telling people they should look at. And by the way, unless you already have a whole bunch of money, you're going to have to get an SBA loan to buy that business. So say it's $1 million of profit, you buy it at 3x, you pay $3 million. You're going to have, you're going to have basically 20% of that up front. You can put down 10%, but the SBA wants to see that you have 20%, typically, most banks. So you have to have 600,000. And then you have a loan for, call it, $2.5 million, that is personally guaranteed by you. And they take a lien on your home if you have one, or your other real estate, or your businesses, and all of that stuff. So there's a not insignificant amount of risk that comes from buying that, sort of perfect business in that sweet spot. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. You have to understand that, like, that's, if you don't have the $600,000, and probably more, because you're going to want to have, access to working capital and all of that. If you don't have that, and putting that level of personal guarantee is, really scary to you, or maybe have a family, or whatever your circumstances, like, these are real things that have to be considered. I bought a much smaller business that I was able to get seller financing on, and put a small down payment, and have a very virtually risk-free, nothing's risk-free, but a pretty low risk debt structure on this business. And I'm able to grow it exactly the way I want to, over time. And so it's a different way to do it. And I would say that, tell you a year ago, I would have maybe not a year ago, maybe a little more than that, I would have believed that what I did was the wrong way to do it. But now that I did it, I love it. I think it was the perfect way for me to do this. And I can take this small business and grow it in an industry that I love, with working with someone who I think is a phenomenal partner and founder, and build it to something bigger that we can grow organically and through future acquisitions. We can add on, and if we want to take debt on in the future because we have a business that's producing so much cash flow, we can do that. So it creates um, a lot of optionality, and you know, and honestly lower stress. So the I've it's taken years, but I've really realized that doing these things, doing these, making, you know, investment decisions for the future, um, there's not one right way to do it. Everybody has a different position in life. If I was 20 and no kids and no family, it's different than it is now. I'm not really that risk averse. I care about one thing, that we get to stay in our house. if they if things go bad, I care that I don't have to tell my kids, hey, we have to move because daddy screwed up. Um, but beyond that, the rest of it is figure outable. So I think that, um, yeah, if there's a take home message here, is if you're feeling frustrated because you're trying to do something that you see as big, and it's not working because you're trying to do it the way everybody's telling you it should be done, maybe take a step back and rethink. It doesn't matter, because you're not investing for them. You're not buying assets for them. You should invest and buy assets to set yourself up for the future. But all of that stuff can be very personalized. So I'm rambling a little bit. I'd welcome the opportunity to talk to someone that's maybe struggling with some of these things I've come across over the last few years, and in making the decision of, oh, well, everybody says I should do X, but X doesn't feel right for me. Yeah, I'm the person who maybe I can save you some time, and make you realize that it's okay to do what works for you, in your situation. So please reach out if that's the case. I think probably that's good for this episode. I would say, again, thank you to all the guests, the past guests that have been on. Thank you to my team, my teams in Lark Capital, teams in my mobile surgery business. I'm incredibly lucky to have good people around me. Um, well, I'll give myself a little bit. Maybe it's not entirely luck. Maybe I've figured out the skill of getting good people around me. So I hope that's true. But it is entirely my focus at this point. I want to work with the people I want to work with. The other thing I'll add in, that's kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, but true, is I've become a very big fan of life insurance. So I'm 51. um, I am healthy, and look forward to many, many more years. But my number one, my why is my family. So my number one thing is making sure that they are protected while I'm here and when I'm not. So it's a it's a funny thing to think about, that I didn't really think about very much until these last few years. But um, yeah, I would say, if you're considering this path, you'll maybe want to consider some life insurance. And I'm talking term. All the people that are gonna want to talk to you about, you know universal life and whole life insurance and infinite banking. I'm not trying to get into that right now. I don't. It's fine if you're in that space. I'm saying, like, I just want something that protects my family in the event of that I'm gone too soon. So but that's my why. They get me up every day. They keep me moving forward. When things are hard, they're still there. Thank you to the kids. I hope they listen to these things someday, maybe when I'm older. This is just a record of me talking about them at this point in my life. But to my wife, Casey, talk about team, partnership, whatever you want to call it. I definitely picked right. Couldn't do any of it without her. I wouldn't want to do any of it without her. I talk a lot about the kids being my why, but like none of this stuff is going to be that entertaining or that enjoyable without you by my side. So thank you, Casey. And thank you all to those of you who have listened and continue to listen. Spoiler alert, we'll probably talk a lot about businesses going forward. We'll continue to talk about real estate because I like diversification across different assets. But yeah, I'm very, very interested in the business, and I'll talk more about kind of what we're doing with 154 as we grow it. I don't think I even completed that story, but we're closed on it in end of October 2025. So we're basically in our 4th month right now, and yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. So please feel free to reach out. You can find me on social media. You can email me, jason@larkcapital.com. And if you are in the Los Angeles area and you need an electrician, please check us out. It's 154 Electric. I think you'll be happy with our. We can take care of you. So thank you all for listening. Hope you keep listening. Have a great 2026, and thank you.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?